At a moment like this, when we should still be mourning the death of two young people, instead, in typical Canadian fashion, some people always spoiling for a fight in Quebec have us talking about that. It's really sad. And of course, my listeners are reacting the way you would expect. They're angry with Quebec. Why is it always about that? How many compromises do we have to make? Which is exactly what they want us to do. This is the bait that they put out there. They know in their hearts that this is not the time to have this discussion. Timing really is everything, and this is not it. Ce n'est pas le moment, franchement, to have this conversation.
That's Ottawa radio personality Bill Carroll reacting to this whole fiasco we have going on now over Michael Rousseau, the president of Air Canada, not having used any French in his message after the tragic accident at LaGuardia. James Mennie is on the line over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, to his point, he did say, by the way, not typical Quebec reaction. He said typical Canadian fashion. Here we go again. And I understand this story is already picking up sort of international attention as well. So give me your take on this.
Well, absolutely. Well, the first thing I want to say is, and I actually think, for some reason, I think I may have been actually on Bill Carroll's show at one point. I don't remember why or when, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. But here's the fact, and I'm sorry if I'm telling tales out of school, Aaron. Bill Carroll is doing what he gets paid to do. He's making sure that those phone lines are blazing. And he was doing a gosh darn fine job. And when he turned around and said, "Ce n'est pas le moment, franchement," he said 3 times as many words in French as Michael Rousseau did during his message concerning the crash down at LaGuardia. And I find it interesting, though, that you would cite the example of talk radio, because I don't have to go to Ottawa, I think, for a good example as to how this story unfolds. I think we can actually go to Montreal's news talk leaders, CJAD. I saw you play the interview that Andrew Carter had this morning with the passenger who was on the plane. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to Andrew talking about this, but most of our longtime listeners will know. And I'm not doing this to embarrass Andrew. He has made no secret of the fact that he has challenges when it comes to speaking French. He'll make fun of his accent and whatever, but, he gives it the old college try, and there you go. But when he was talking about this today, this guy who would not be mistaken for a French language activist turned around and said, "I wonder how I would have felt if it had been my son who died on that plane and this guy had delivered his message entirely in French," which I thought was a very, very interesting take to have. And as I told you yesterday, Aaron, I know we're talking now, every single politician and their dog has jumped on this bandwagon. Yeah. When you and I were talking about this yesterday, that had yet to happen. When you and I were talking about this yesterday, I was talking about the fact that it went beyond, it's not a matter of scoring points or asking what does Quebec want. It was a matter of respect. It was a matter of courtesy. And my other example here on Montreal's News Talk Leader is even closer to home. It was on Montreal Now, Aaron. It involved you. A few years back, and we'll situate this in time because you and your co-host, Natasha Hall, had a guest on just before my segment. And I can't for the life of me remember what this guy was talking about, Aaron, but I remember within 10 seconds of that segment beginning, it was clear this guy could not speak a single word of English. He talked it like that, maybe he try and say that, but he not. And the thing was, and once again, I'm not telling tales out of school, but one of the ways you bail on this, you say, "Oh, I'm very sorry, Mr. Trombley, our connection seems to be bad," and you end the call and you do damage control. Do you remember what you did, Aaron?
No.
You interviewed the guy in French.
Okay.
And I remember I joked about it afterwards, saying that, can you imagine some longtime listener just, out in the depths of the West Island that turned on the radio, heard you interviewing the guy and said, "Stop the car, honey, they're talking French on CJAD." But here's my point. You could have weaseled out of it. You exhibited respect. You exhibited courtesy. You told a guy who had taken some time to come on to the show, "It's okay, we understand. We want to get the message out, and I'm going to talk to you in your language." It didn't cost any money. As far as I know, you may be in violation of some CRTC regulations, but this is what I'm talking about. I'm not scoring points politically. I'm not turning around talking about the oppression of the Quebec people or people in Ottawa tearing their hair out because, them Frenchmen, they have been at it now for 50 years, putting their French on the cornflakes boxes. This is not about that. This is about simple courtesy. It's about simple respect. And I got to tell you, Aaron, in front of me, I have my because every now and then I commit journalism. In 2025, Michael Rousseau, the CEO of Air Canada, received a base salary of $1.3 million, a bonus of $3 million, and stock options of $7.8 million. Okay? All of it totaling up to a little over $12 million. Avec un salaire de même, Aaron, je pense que M. Rousseau est capable d'apprendre quelques phrases en français.
Mais Jim, je pense qu'il ne veut pas. It's what some people are
C'est
saying.
clair, hein? Même si c'est son job, là,
Right.
okay? He is subject to the official whether he likes it or not. And I think that's the one, and I'm hearing this from Anglophones too, eh? It's like he doesn't care. That is, and when this happened with the press conference, I'm going to learn how to speak French. It's like, no, I'm not really going to learn how to. I just told you so you'd shut up. And here I go. And then to have one of his flunkies come out and say, well, he's physically, what? What is he? Is he got some DNA problem that if he speaks French his head explodes? What rubbish! What absolute rubbish!
So to that point, let me read, and I'm going to bring this up when I get to the question with respect to the corporate communications team at Air Canada, which is just as disappointing, or maybe more so than what Mr. Rousseau did. Here's what they wrote. In the tragic circumstances surrounding the crash of Flight AC 8646, Mr. Rousseau was keen to address customers, employees, and those of CJAD, their families, and everyone affected by the tragedy. He therefore recorded a message as a matter of priority before departing on a flight for the crash site. Despite his efforts, Jim, his ability to express himself in French does not allow him to convey such a sensitive message in that language as he would wish. We therefore use subtitles to ensure that everyone can receive his message directly. To me, that's about as big as weaseling out as I've ever heard.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, your flunkies can type you up like a 3 or 4 line thing in French explaining, my French isn't very good, but let me say this. I convey my sympathies to the family. I am cognizant of, whatever the actions of my employees who died in my service. But the guy couldn't even do that. Now please, I know politicians are piping up now because that's what they do. Sure. And they do that on both sides of the linguistic divide. But let's be real here. This is not about politics, as I say. This is part of the dynamic of what this country is. And you either respect that or you don't. If you don't, that's fine. It's a free country, as I like to say. And I know there are plenty of people in Quebec who would sooner die than speak a word of English. But on the other hand, they're not the CEO of Air Canada, and they're not making $12 million a year.
I will point out one thing, and I said this is what we don't know, although maybe you kind of alluded to what it's more likely to be. I got a text message from someone when we first brought this up who had worked at Air Canada, retired years ago, when I said, I don't know who's at fault here, because I can't imagine, I think I brought this up yesterday as well, Jim, I can't imagine someone at Air Canada in corporate communications or someone in an executive rank who would not have thought to go to Michael Rousseau and suggest, hey, listen, in this case, when you do your message, make sure you include some French. Having been through this before a few years ago. And the suggestion to me in this text message was someone there absolutely did. He chose to ignore that.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
Well, the other issue as well is, he could have easily have staffed the message job to one of his 87 vice presidents, okay, and said, listen, why didn't you do it yourself, Mr. Well, I was on my way to New York. That was my priority. So I want to get the message out. So I had my vice president in charge of doing stuff I don't want to do convey this message.
100%.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I'm saying? It was so simple. And here you and I are talking about this. Here are people getting worked up about this because this guy, did I mention he gets $12 million a year, Aaron? This guy couldn't be bothered to pipe up. And even with a sentence, I'm not expecting half and half. One sentence, 2 sentences, that's it.
Make the effort.
Yeah. Okay.
By the way, to the point now where, I know everyone's pulling out their hair here. Francois Legault is already saying he should be fired. Christine Frechette. What do you think? Yeah. What happens with that?
Well, first of all, it's not their jurisdiction. They can huff and puff and do whatever. I found it interesting that Mark Carney, who himself has been under pressure to speak French would use the words that he used. I believe the use the word was insensitive, which is the equivalent, as far as I'm concerned, as the Prime Minister throwing a chair at this guy's head. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's a federal gig, and you know, like if it was a private company, I would still say you could make an effort. But it's not just a private company.
It's Air Canada.
It's a private company that is governed by the Official Languages Act. So you're either in or you're out. But you know what? You can't go down the middle and then, you know, shrug and start having these ridiculous excuses, because believe me, you're not helping yourself. You're just digging the hole that much deeper.
So I'm going to close. I want to get to our question, which concerns this, but I took it upon myself, Jim, because we did not get that apology from Michael Rousseau, and he spoke nothing in French, to go ahead and have AI help us out with what I think should have been Michael Rousseau's apology in French. Here it is.
Je suis Michael Rousseau, président et chef de la direction d'Air Canada. Je suis ici aujourd'hui parce que je réalise que j'ai commis une erreur et je veux la corriger en publiant une vidéo qui abordait le tragique accident qui a coûté la vie à 2 pilotes d'Air Canada et exprimer mes condoléances à leurs familles. Je n'ai pas parlé en français, même si l'un des pilotes était du Québec. Cela a montré un manque de jugement et de compassion. Et franchement, j'aurais dû mieux faire. Vous avez ma parole que je ferai mieux la prochaine fois. Merci de votre compréhension.
I think that's all he had to say.
That scares the hell out of me that AI can do an Anglo accent that good.
That's actually his voice. So
yeah, I understand that, but the idea that it can extrapolate and do that same kind of pronunciation. Because as far as we know, Michael Rousseau's never spoken a word of French.
Yeah. Well, bonjour and merci.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Bonsoir,
James Mennie, James Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.